eyes to see a familiar sight: his bedroom ceiling. Huh? How did I get home? He tried to remember the events of the previous evening, but his memories were scrambled and fuzzy, unreachable. Suddenly, he heard an angelic woman's voice call his name. Victor. He sat up, confused. Hello? Who's there? But there was no response. His head throbbed in pain. He braced himself against his bed and felt his hand shoot through the mattress and burst through the wood slats below. His hand had punctured the bed and shattered the bed frame. He quickly pulled back and looked down in confusion. What the hell just happened? His mind raced, but he couldn't retrieve any memories. It's like something is blocking me from my own past. He tried to piece together his fragmented thoughts. Let's start at the beginning. I went to the grocery store to buy the food my mom ordered, but as he tried to retrace his steps, he was distracted by an unbearable thirst. It's like I just ran a marathon and I need a gallon of water immediately. He shot to his feet, ignoring the sounds of wood splintering from the floorboards below. He grabbed the handle to his bathroom door, attempting to open it, but instead ripping it off its hinges, tearing it completely from the wall. He was shocked at the show of force, but didn't have time to admire it, or even question how it was possible. My throat is bone dry. I need water, now. He ran into the bathroom and tried to turn on the sink. But once again, his strength was too much and the handle snapped off, spewing water everywhere. He stuck his head into the geyser, desperately gulping from the wild stream. He felt the cold water from the tap enter his mouth and seep down his throat, but it didn't satisfy him. I need more. Again, he heard the strange angelic woman's voice emanating in his head. Calm down. Suddenly, his crippling thirst vanished. He collapsed on the ground, panting heavily, comforted and frightened by the voice at the same time. Who's there? He was met with only silence. He took a deep breath. What the hell is happening? He looked at the sink above him, the water still spraying everywhere, now pouring down the counter. I can't leave it like this. He opened the cabinet beneath the sink and wrenched the water valve shut with a flick of his wrist, watching as the broken faucet sputtered to a stop. He sighed in relief and climbed to his feet, perplexed by a glimpse of himself in the mirror. No way. Is that really me? He looked taller. His body was buff, muscles in all the right places, six-pack abs and ripped arms. But what stood out the most about his appearance was his sickly pale skin. He suffered from a rare blood disorder that made him anemic, so he was used to looking gaunt. But the way he looked now, his complexion was almost ghostly. It's like I've been drained of all my blood. On the other hand, he noticed that his face was more defined. His blue eyes and black hair had gained a distinct shine. He was stunned. How is this possible? Was I kidnapped by the government and drafted into some kind of classified super soldier program? He heard a different woman's voice, a familiar one. Victor, what's going on? What's with all the noise? Mom. He took a deep breath and noticed that his throat was once again parched. He looked at the wall and somehow his eyes bore right through it. He saw the outline of his mom, enveloped in a red pulsing glow, her heart beating in a steady rhythm. It's almost like heat vision. Suddenly, he found himself fighting a strong desire to sink his teeth into his mother's flesh and drink her blood. What's wrong with me? His mother was oblivious to his condition. Victor? What's happening? What was that noise? He jolted out of his brief fugue state and called to her in the most normal tone he could muster. I'm fine. But it was obvious by her alarmed response that he failed. Victor, open the door. What's going on in there? He looked at his reflection in the mirror and noticed that his eyes had turned blood red. Oh, shit. He tried to steady his nerves. Think rationally. He used all of his strength to resist the temptation to barge out of the room and bite his mother's neck. He took a calming deep breath. Mom, I'm busy right now. He saw through the wall as her body language relaxed. Thank God. He couldn't see her facial expressions, but he could see her heart return to pumping at a slower rate. And then he heard her voice again. Can you please open the door, sweetie? He was agitated. I can't. I'm not wearing clothes right now. She exhaled and turned away. Okay, we'll talk when you get out. He saw her saunter down the hallway. Why did she give up so easily? Maybe she thought I was, never mind. He again heard her voice in the distance. Make sure you take out the trash. I shouldn't have to remind you of that, but when you don't have a girlfriend, you end up taking orders from your mother. Oof. Low blow. He couldn't help but crack a smile. My mom is brutally honest, but I love that about her, though she always finds a way to get under my skin. I guess when you're 21 and still living at home, familiarity will breed contempt. He glanced at the clock to see that it was almost 8 a.m. Damn, I have class in 15 minutes. But I'm not sure I should be out and about in my condition. First, I need to figure out what's going on. My college credits can wait. He gazed around his room and assessed the damage. Hole in the bed, broken floor, dismantled door, flooded bathroom. I should probably tidy up before I go anywhere. It took him about 2 hours to make his quarters presentable again. While straightening up, he discovered several new things about himself. In addition to his sudden increase in strength and vision, his other senses were more attuned as well. His hearing was 10 times as acute. I can hear everything in my house and in a 5-block radius. This is kind of annoying. He could hear countless voices at once and was unable to discern who was who and where they were coming from. Let me try something. He clicked open a porn file on his computer called The Hardest Game in the World. He concentrated on the adult video playing in front of him. With focus, he was able to eventually drown out the cacophony of other sounds and retain a singular focus on the X-rated images. I hope no one comes in. While focusing intently on the video, he noticed that his sense of smell had also exponentially improved, but the only thing he could smell was blood all around him. I can't differentiate one blood source from another, but I know it's there, waiting for me to drink it. What a weird feeling. He practiced using his new X-ray vision. When he activated this form of sight, all boundaries around him dissolved and everything turned red. No walls, no partitions, no barriers. This way of seeing also made his unquenchable thirst for blood even more overwhelming. I've got to be careful and use this sparingly. And then all at once, it dawned on him. He could no longer deny the facts. There was only one explanation for all these weird developments. I've become a vampire. Or something very close to it. The telltale signs were obvious: pale skin, red eyes, trim physique, and an insatiable thirst. If I've gained all these strengths, I wonder what my weaknesses are. The most obvious weaknesses he knew from vampire books and movies were garlic, crucifixes, sunlight, and the inability to enter a house uninvited. He decided that no matter how insignificant any of those weaknesses may be, he needed to test them all, to know the limits of his new form. He scanned his room and located a cross necklace hanging from his computer screen. He gingerly reached out and touched it with the tip of his finger, expecting to feel a burning sensation. But nothing happened. Okay, one down. Next on the list was garlic. Hey, I got a pizza a couple nights ago and there was definitely garlic in the sauce. He yanked open the door to his mini fridge and retrieved 2 slices of pizza wrapped in tinfoil. He sniffed the cold pizza. And then he held it to his lips and nervously bit down. As soon as his teeth made contact, his lips clamped shut and his body recoiled. He charged into the bathroom and spit the tiny bite of pizza into the toilet. His face cringed and his stomach churned with nausea. Disgusting. Why do I feel like I've just eaten expired fish? Is the garlic bothering me, or was that pizza just old? He took a series of slow, deep breaths, and gradually the urge to vomit receded. At some point, I need to test a whole clove of garlic. That experiment didn't really tell me anything. He decided that next he needed to test his reaction to the sun. He gently crept up to his bedroom window where the curtain was drawn shut. He pinched the corner of the fabric and cautiously peeled it back. The sunlight peeked through the small gap. He gulped in nervous anticipation. What if it burns my skin? After all, this is known as one of the biggest vampire weaknesses. What if simply putting the tip of my finger in the sun hurts me? But I need to know. Slowly, he inched his finger closer to the sunlight, stopping with only a centimeter to spare. Don't be a chicken, Victor. Do it. With a wince, he thrust his finger forward squarely into the sunlight. He was relieved to see that nothing happened. He felt no pain and saw no change in the condition of his finger. He whisked the curtain fully open, letting sunlight stream into his room. He bathed in the warm glow, allowing the rays to caress his muscular body. He lay back down on his bed and stared at the ceiling. He had no obvious vampire weaknesses, besides a mild aversion to possibly spoiled garlic pizza. But he wasn't yet ready to test the full limits of his vulnerabilities. His eyelids grew heavy as he played back the events of his bizarre morning. He still couldn't remember anything from the night before. I have all the classic characteristics of a vampire, but without any of the detriments? So then what am I exactly? And how did this all happen? Without any clear answers, he drifted into a deep slumber enveloped by darkness. Hours vanished as the day passed by. Slowly, the warm glow of the sun gave way to the cold shadows of night. Soon, everything around Victor was quiet and still. And that's when he suddenly jolted awake. Covered in sweat, his vision pulsing. He was consumed by a single disturbing fear, feasting on the juicy, beating heart inside his mother's chest. The hunger was unbearable. I can't control this horrible feeling. My family is in grave danger. Victor jolted awake, drenched in sweat. He clawed at his throat, overwhelmed by an unbearable thirst. He found himself possessed by a single terrifying thought. I need to drink my mother's blood. He realized this unstoppable desire might drive him to do something he would regret forever. I have to leave right now for the good of the family. He hoisted open his bedroom window with his newfound strength. He heard the pane of glass crack from his inadvertent force. He crawled out onto the ledge and stood against the night sky, the wind whipping against his face. He found that at night he felt even stronger, his senses even further heightened. Before, he could hear his whole neighborhood, but now his auditory reach seemed limitless. I have no dominion over my urges. The bloodlust is overtaking me. I feel like a drunk driver in my own body. No control over my speed or direction. All I know is that I need blood, and I need it now. Suddenly, he felt something pierce the inside of his lips. His incisors grew into long, jagged fangs. I really am a damn vampire. Impulsively, he threw himself off of the edge and into the air. His body soared for a moment and then crashed onto the street below. The road cratered beneath him, but he was uninjured. He stood and shook off the impact before taking off down the street, sniffing wildly. He was in hot pursuit of the delectable scent of blood. The fragrance overwhelmed him. I have to find it. He lost all sense of time, his consciousness overtaken by animal instinct, despite his best efforts to wrest back control. Soon he found himself in a dark alley. His primal vision suddenly kicked in. His world turned red. He saw 4 silhouettes, 2 men twisting a woman's arms behind her back and a third man pressing a knife to her neck. He studied the chests of the 3 men, as if stalking prey. He honed in on their hearts, glowing red, pumping, pulsing. Only these men's hearts weren't as vibrant as when he had seen his mother's heart. The light they emitted was duller, much duller. One of the men noticed him. Hey, who the hell are you? Victor barely registered the man's words, instead fixated on the woman. For some strange reason, she doesn't have a red glow in her chest. It's in her neck. The knife-wielding man stalked toward him, but stopped dead in his tracks. Eyes wide, he stared in horror at the smile curling across Victor's lips, revealing his razor-sharp fangs. Fangs like shark's teeth that could easily tear flesh and bones. The faces of all 3 of the men shifted from violent delight to absolute terror. One of them shouted, "Monster!" Victor's smile grew even broader at the sight of their fear. It's as if I'm fueled by it. He confidently strode toward the men, who were now frozen in place. Whether they knew it or not, their fates were already sealed. With supernatural speed, Victor appeared in front of the man holding the knife, giving him no time to react. With ease, he plunged his hand into the man's chest and ripped out his still-beating heart. Holding it in his hand, he marveled at its steady, hypnotic rhythm. I'm starving, but for some reason this man's blood doesn't interest me. He unwrapped his fingers and let the heart splatter to the ground. Another one of the men began screaming like a scared child. Victor disappeared and then reappeared behind him, sending the man into a disoriented state. Please don't! But Victor had already made up his mind. He grabbed a clump of the man's greasy, matted hair and ripped his head clean off his neck. He stared at the decapitated head in his grip, watching blood stream down the man's frozen face. I can't believe I just did that. I don't crave his blood, but I am curious. Victor guided the head toward his lips and ran his tongue across the man's cheek. He recoiled at the taste. Ugh, disgusting. Tastes like spoiled meat. Maybe I'm not interested in men's blood, only women's blood. He wheeled around to face the last bandit standing. He stiffened his arm and reared it back like a broadsword. With one swift motion, he hurled it forward and sliced the man in half at the waist. The bandit looked down in horror at the last sight he would ever see, his detached torso sliding across his legs and toppling to the ground. Victor found himself intoxicated by the pleasure of killing. The smell of blood aroused him, but he felt strange, not quite conscious, like he was in a violent waking dream. He was jarred by the sound of a woman's voice laughing. His vision slowly returned to normal as the red faded into the shadows of the night. He stared through the darkness at a tall, pale woman with a white ponytail so long it nearly touched the ground. She had hypnotic purple eyes, a slim waist, perky breasts, and delicious hips wrapped tightly in a black dress. As predicted, you exceeded my expectations, Victor. He immediately recognized her voice. It was the angelic woman's voice he had been hearing in his head. He stammered, "It's you." His mind was flooded with questions, but she silenced him with a finger to his lips. "Shh. First, you must quench your thirst. My blood will tell you everything you need to know, darling." She seductively unclasped the top 3 buttons of her dress, slowly loosening her collar to reveal the taut, milky white flesh of her neck. Victor was overwhelmed with her aroma. Drool dribbled from the corner of his mouth as his body vibrated with intense desire. She beckoned him forward with a lascivious grin. "Well, what are you waiting for?" Victor lunged toward her, plunging his sharp fangs into her tender skin. She squirmed ever so slightly. "I see you have a violent nature." Victor was too entranced to respond. He guzzled her blood, overtaking with a feeling of pure ecstasy. "This is the most delicious thing I've ever tasted. Like a gourmet dish prepared just for me by a world-renowned chef, and then mainlined straight into my veins." Beyond her decadent flavor, he felt a different kind of connection forming. "I feel her whole existence within me. She's a drug and I'm instantly addicted. Her blood tastes so damn good." A licorice smile grew on her face. "You're enjoying me. I can feel you." Without warning, he felt a sharp pain on his own neck. He looked down, startled to see that she had now bitten him. Everything he felt from drinking her blood suddenly intensified as she drank his. Somehow, her already divine taste was even more incredible. He felt their energy merge, their souls entwine. They became one. This sensation is indescribable, like nothing I've ever felt. Suddenly, he was overcome with a powerful flashback. Lost memories from before he woke up. In these memories, he could see everything from the perspective of the white-haired woman. He was in the grocery store. She was watching him from a distance. He heard the voice of a different woman standing beside her, but couldn't see her face. The mystery woman sounded ambivalent. "Him? Are you sure?" The white-haired woman nodded with certainty. "Yes, I'm sure. I will make him my darling." Everything suddenly erupted in a blinding white light as Victor now saw himself lying on the dirty floor of a decrepit, abandoned building. The white-haired woman bit her finger, sending a rivulet of blood trickling down her palm. As droplets of her blood landed on the ground, a glowing magic ring formed around her and Victor. Victor saw that his arm was mangled with a massive wound, as if he was gored by a wild animal. "I don't remember any of this." He saw himself losing a dangerous amount of blood. The woman crouched down to his level and sunk her teeth into her wrist, holding her punctured arm over Victor's gaping mouth. A stream of crimson blood flowed down into his throat like a waterfall. She suddenly straddled Victor's prone body and stared deep into his eyes. "Victor, prepare yourself to be reborn." She cradled his head in her arms and, with a violent twist, snapped his neck, killing him instantly. Victor watched himself die in stunned belief. And then he saw his dead body begin to twitch and convulse, regenerating at an unbelievable speed. The magic circle began to pulse and undulate. He saw his eyes shoot open as he gasped for breath, the magic circle receding all around him. The white-haired woman stood over him, grinning with deep satisfaction. "Success!" Victor noticed that the other woman, the mystery woman from the grocery store, was gone. His eyes began to glow red. He sprang to his feet and instinctively chomped down on the white-haired woman's neck, slurping down her blood, a look of pure exhilaration in his eyes. Victor watched himself finishing his first drink of blood. Immediately, the world of the memory began to fade, and he found himself back in his own body, standing in the dark alleyway, his fangs still snugly planted in the woman's neck. She flinched with a playful smile. "Victor, are you trying to kill me? Surely you're satisfied by now." He pulled back and looked into her eyes, blood still dribbling from the corners of his mouth. "I have so many questions. I don't even know your name." The woman flashed the most beautiful smile he had ever seen and introduced herself. Violet Snow." Victor felt his heart flutter. "Pleasure to meet you, Violet Snow. My name's Victor Walker." She smiled and stared deep into his eyes. "The walking Victor. That's easy to remember." Victor stammered. "Yeah, I guess so." Violet laughed, amused at his awkward innocence. "Let's change locations, Victor, shall we?" Before Victor could respond, he heard a loud whoosh and saw Violet vanish into the darkness. He was stunned. "Violet? Violet! Where'd you go?" He called out for her, but all he could hear in return was his own voice echoing across the dark alleyway. Panic began to set in. Was she even real? He looked down at the mangled corpses at his feet and trembled, his vampiric trance wearing off. What have I done? Have I lost my mind?